how are we going to create good-paying jobs in America? Well, I know how to create good-paying jobs in America. Reduce the federal regulations on our corporations and our companies and our businesses in this country. Make the tax code simpler so that businesses can make decisions what's based on best on their financial situation and best on their company's situation than on what the tax code says. And if we did that, if we lowered those tax rates on our companies, there would be companies pouring into this country wanting to do business in America because if its regulatory burden doesn't kill them, and you have the tax burden, it's not overwhelming them. We've got the most productive workforce in the world. We've typically had one of the better economies in the world, and we've got the most stable economic situation in the world. Companies want to come to America, and now what you're seeing, because of the fact we have Marcellus shale gas in Pennsylvania and the Bakken oil and gas play in North Dakota, you're seeing companies saying America has long-term, inexpensive energy. So they're starting to come back to America. We need to couple that with reforming the regulatory code and the tax code. And as I said, I think we have to put a sign up saying, slow down, we can't take all of you coming to America, because people want to be in America to do business.
Thank you.
Another member of our audience, and I see a gentleman right behind you, Janine, he has his hand up.
Thank you for being here, Congressman. I'd like to take this question in a different direction, because one thing that's been bothering me very much is the fact they keep coming up with more and more impetus to try to come up with immigration reform. Immigration reform to me is a scary thing, because there's no way of screening who's coming across the border, who's already in this country, what country they came from, whether or not they're terrorists or people who really want to be here to do good for this country. I'd like to know how you intend to vote on immigration reform.
Well, if you're talking about the Senate bill, I've been pretty clear. I'm not going to support the Senate bill. The Senate bill is an absolute no vote. First of all, it's a monstrosity that nobody understands. Second of all, I believe there's amnesty in there, and for me, amnesty is a non-starter. The second part of the equation is we've got to secure our borders. And you know, the lessons of history, and the recent history, is back in 1986. Ronald Reagan and the Democratic-controlled House passed a bill that said we're going to control the border, we're going to enforce the law and fine people that are employing illegals, and they said in that bill we're going to give 2.8 million illegals amnesty. Well, what they did was they gave them amnesty, they never finished securing the border, and they haven't enforced the laws. So job one is securing our border, to make sure we know who's coming in and out of this country. Because not only do we need to know about who's coming here to work and work peacefully, but where the terrorists are coming through. And that border is extremely porous for them to get across. So securing our border.
Yeah, we have all nationalities coming across that border.
Sure. But securing that border is first and foremost. The second thing is we do need to have a modern visa system today, so we can tell. So there are workers that need to come in this country. Look, we live in the agricultural belt of Pennsylvania. The 9th Congressional District is the 11th largest agricultural district in the country. And if you go to these farmers out there, there's a lot of Hispanics working there, because people can't get Americans, people living here, to milk the cows and pick the apples or the pears, wherever it is. And so having a visa program that it gets the kind of workers that want to come here to work here, getting in here legally, letting them go home, because many of them come here, they don't want to stay, but because it's so difficult to deal with our visa system, they come here and they stay. So making sure we're reforming that so that our farmers and other industries that need those immigrant workers have them do the job. And finally, putting a law in place that has real teeth. If somebody is hiring illegals, giving them some small fine is not to do it. You need to have a significant fine for these folks. And the people, and that's what we need to put in place. And again, we're in the House, we're going to try to deal with that in the upcoming, this fall, piece by piece, but the Senate bill is not going to see the light of day in the House.
The other part of it is the expense that they create on our country.
Absolutely.
Of our Social Security and all of the other benefits that should be going to Americans.
Sure. In the southwest of this country, the numbers I've heard just on health care alone exceeds $1 billion a year. It's wrong. We've got to get control of our border. And you know, it's not that difficult to do. You build a fence where you need a hardened fence. Other places you don't need so much fence. You have the technology. But one of the easiest things for us to do is, if you're an immigrant in this country, give you a card that makes it easy for the farmer out in the cove to go to his computer or go to the local police station, the courthouse, swipe the card that has this person's biometrics on it, and I'm talking about immigrants, I'm not talking about citizens, make it easy for them. I had a farmer that came to me and said, I gotta hire Hispanics to milk on my farm. He said, I just wanted to tell you, I've been looking at their paperwork, and I can't tell you if it's fake or if it's real. How do you expect me and then you're gonna come to me if I, by accident, hire an illegal, and I'm gonna be in trouble for it. That's something that's pretty easy to do today. If you're coming into this country, you get a biometric card, it's an easy swipe, and so the local business person or farmer can tell this person's here, he's got his papers, he's legal, or he's not.
Congressman, I do have to ask you as a news reporter, I know back in 2006, after the murder of 3 outstanding citizens right here in Blair County, you had said and promised you would work to fix the problem. What have you done specifically since those murders to help stave this problem off?
Well, legislation is introduced, we support it, we try to work through it. It's been very difficult. And again, this is not a Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal issue. There are conservative Republicans in border states that have a very different view than I do on this issue. And so it's very difficult. And the President Bush attempted to do some immigration reform, it fell flat. So it's a very difficult issue. And again, it's not ideologically driven. It's driven really from the different areas of the country. Some parts of the country need the immigrant workers far greater than we do. You go to the breadbasket of America, Central California. It feeds not only America, but it feeds the world. And if you go out there, it's immigrant Hispanic workers that are working the fields out there, and they need more of them because they can't get American citizens to work the field. So again, it's a tough issue. We're working very, very hard to try to do something. But again, when you have that kind of split regionally, it makes it even more difficult.
And I'll take another question from our audience. Gentleman right here, glasses.
What do you plan, my name's Lee Thomas. What do you plan to do about the harassment of whistleblowers like Edward Snowden by the Obama administration?
Well, I respectfully disagree. He's not a whistleblower.
Well,
He's a traitor.
Not really. I'm serious to him for Obama.
Well, I can tell you what I've seen on classified briefings, the information that he's given, he's a traitor. He gave information that is very harmful to national security. So again, we can debate it, but I can tell you he's a traitor. And if he comes back into this country, he's going to be prosecuted in a court of law under the laws of the land. He's going to be given his rights because he's a U.S. citizen. But he's not a whistleblower. There are other people out there that are whistleblowers that are doing America a service.
Why didn't
This gentleman
Obama
didn't.
prosecute for the illegal things he has done?
Exactly.
We could debate that another time, but real quick, how many of you think that Edward Snowden is a traitor and deserves to be prosecuted? Many of you think that he's a hero and should be left alone? There you have it. Move on to our next question. Sir, go ahead.
I'm Jim Moser. Perhaps I'm getting old and more senile. But can you explain to me the part of the Constitution that doesn't include all of us? You used the word America frequently. Now the waivers, you mentioned 7 instances of waivers, and then if I recall correctly, to get Obamacare in, did they grant a waiver to the entire state of Nebraska? And maybe there was another. Louisiana. So how is it that to even progress towards something like that, do you make exceptions?
Amen.
Law is nothing.
Well, I can tell you the waivers, when the Democratic-controlled Congress passed Obamacare, they gave the Secretary of Health and Human Services, or President Obama's appointee, which is President Obama, the ability to implement different sections of it as they deemed that they were ready to go. So, on 7 occasions, he's given waivers. And again, we're waiting to see what he does with the labor unions. And again, it's what they're doing is they're doing political payoffs to their supporters, the things they're afraid they're going to get themselves in trouble on, and that's what they did with Nebraska and Louisiana to get those 2 senators to get on board. So it's wrong, but it's a legislative body and they passed it. And we've had a very, very, very disappointing to me we had a Chief Justice who I thought was going to be a spectacular, conservative, constitutional justice, a jurist, and a Chief Justice, and really let me down when he was the vote that said Obamacare is constitutional and okay, you can do those things.
Rita Ergler, you're our next questionnaire.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to know, is the Canadian pipeline put on the back burner? And if not, what are you or anyone in Congress or the Senate doing to make it happen?
Well, the House has passed several times to do it. I just became the chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and that our committee has jurisdiction over that. The former chairman didn't run it through the committee. I thought it was extremely important that it came through the committee. We had full debate in our committee. We passed it out of our committee, and it went to the House floor. So we passed it several times. Again, under the law, the Secretary of State, because it's a crossing an international boundary, she or he, whoever it is, and I say the Secretary, it's President Obama. They work for President Obama, and he has not allowed it to move forward. So again, we're continuing to push them. We're going to see sooner rather than later the Canadians decide we're going to just put this on a boat and we're going to send it over to China. And so I don't know why in the world we wouldn't take oil from one of our best allies in the world and utilize it to create 20,000 jobs, to build the pipeline, and of course help get it into our system to help us keep a reliable source of energy from somebody that's our friend, not our enemy.
Congressman, thank you. John Kaysen, I saw you had submitted a question, so you're up next.
Bill, you gave several excellent examples this evening of how government isn't working. And government's a big operation, it's a hard thing to run, but if I ran my home and my business the way you guys run the country, I'd be divorced and bankrupt. And perception is reality. And I think as the general public, we feel both parties are not focused on what's best for the country, but rather make decisions based upon themselves, special interest, and I hate this word, or for the party. I have actually talked to people, and I'm one of them, who considered leaving the country, and as you know, there's not a good place to go. But people are at an extreme high level of dissatisfaction. Doesn't that say that Washington is not doing its job? And isn't it? And isn't it time to consider a clean sweep of those in power?
Well, I agree with you. Washington is not functioning. But when I make decisions based on, when I make votes, I look at the issue, I study the issue. I got some criticism because I came out on Syria and said, I'm skeptical, I'm leaning no, but I want to hear all the facts because I owe it. I owe it to you, my constituents, to listen to the facts on any issue and then vote what I think is best for the country, what's best for the folks in my district, and what upholds the Constitution. So, you know, people can say that this vote or that vote is wrong or right. I try to make those votes based on my study of the issue and what I think is constitutionally sound and what I think is best for the country and what's best for my district. So, you know, clean sweep, are you going to get something different? You get a different outcome? I'm not so sure you get a different outcome because you still bring 435 people into the United States Congress, the House. You bring 100 people from all across this country with different views and views on issues and beliefs and morality and convictions. I don't think you get a different outcome. The Founding Fathers set up a system, and quite frankly, it's been going on for 230 years. It's not perfect, but it's a system that there's tension, and at times it works slow. But, you know, now we have divided government, which is even we saw what United Government did when they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency was controlled by the president's party. They ran through Obamacare, and I can tell you this: it wasn't the Republicans that won back the House in 2010. It's the Democrats lost it because of what they did. And the American people rose up, and the Tea Party was a huge part of that. It energized millions of people that weren't engaged in the political process, and so now you have the House is the backstop for some of this bad stuff that we can't repeal it, some of it, but we can certainly stop some of it from moving forward, and we've done that. So again, there's a theory out there that if you clean sweep, you're going to get something different. But I look around a room like this. Are you going to get 100% of people thinking the same thing? I don't think so. I think you're still going to come up with a system that there's still competing interests, people have different views, and you're going to have, in our representative democracy, you have those kinds of issues that come up in debate, and sometimes it doesn't work that well. I think it was Winston Churchill that said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the rest, because it's not efficient, and we have these fights.
Would you cast a vote to support term limits, and if so, how long should a congressman or a senator be allowed to stay before it's time to move on?
Sure, well, it's always been my view, we have term limits. It's 2 years in the House and it's 6 years in the Senate. And the founding fathers debated that very issue when they were talking about our Constitution, and they came up with a solution. They said, the American people were smart enough to say, we're going to throw people out, and we have. People aren't elected if they don't represent the values and the beliefs and the viewpoints of their district. We saw in 2010, we had 87 or 89 new Republicans come to the House. We have half of our members, just about half of our members, have only been in Congress for, I guess, 4 years. 4 years. So we've had a big turnover in Congress. And again, that's why I stand for election every 2 years. And for me, election day is the day you decide whether you're going to rehire me or fire me. And I understand that and I respect that. But that's the system we have. And again, I put my record on the line. I let the voters take a look at it. I go around, talk to folks, and you're going to make that decision, not me. You have that power, not me.
Take another question from our audience.